In this video, we're going to talk about levels and grids. Now, these are both considered datum elements, and what they do is establish context for the geometry within our building project. So levels represent actual floor levels. So they're horizontal datum planes that establish heights within our building, and grids are vertical datum elements that we use to locate structure, things like columns. So not every building needs a column grid, but nearly every building has some levels. But in this case, we're going to add both just to kind of get ourselves set up here. Now, I've created a new project based on the commercial default template, and I haven't made any changes to it. So this is exactly what it would look like if you created it from scratch. Now, I'll start with the levels. Now, in order to create a level, you need to be working in an elevation or a section view. So I'm going to scroll down here on the browser and locate my elevations branch. And then it doesn't matter which elevation you work in. I'll work in the south, and I'll double click it to open that up. Now you'll see some lines across the screen. These represent the edges of the levels. So if you imagine that this is where the height of that level is, and what you're seeing is the edge of that plane, you can almost think of it as a plane slicing through the building at that height. Now I'm going to put my mouse over here on the right, and then not going to select anything, just kind of put it in that general area, and then roll the wheel up just a little bit to kind of zoom in and get a better look at those names and heights. So we can see here that not only do we have each of our levels and they're set at various heights, but notice that if we scroll back up here on the browser, there's actually a floor plan that corresponds to each one of those levels. So there's a level 1, there's a roof, and then bottom and top of footing. So not only do the levels establish a height within your building, but they can also have associated floor plans. Now, what I'd like to do is add a level 2 level and corresponding floor plan. Now, I could just take this level right here and rename it to level 2, but I want to keep that roof. So what I'm going to do instead is move the roof out of the way and allow room to build a level 2 in between. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to select the roof level line first, and that will make the text turn blue and allows me to activate it. And all you need to do next is click right on the number and type in the new value that you want. So in this case, I'm going to put in 30, press enter, and that will move that level up. Now it went off screen, so I'm going to hold my wheel in and drag just enough that I can see where it put that level. And you can now see that it's up there at 30 feet, giving me plenty of room to add in a level 2 in between. Now, I'm going to roll the wheel to zoom back out so I can see the full extent of the levels again. Go to the Architecture tab and use my level tool right here on the datum panel. I'll click that, and you could draw this anywhere, but if you move it nearby one of the endpoints of one of the existing levels, you're going to see a little dashed line appear. And as long as you click right where that dashed line is, it will line up and associate itself with that endpoint, and it will do that on both sides. So I'm going to drag across and connect it at both ends, and you'll kind of see those dashed lines appear on both ends now, indicating that they're associated together. Now here's another one of those temporary dimensions. It's currently at 14, and I want to actually change that to 16. So I'll just activate that number by clicking right on it, type in 1616, and press enter, and you'll see that level 2 move up to that new location. Now let me click the modify tool here to cancel, and notice that if we look over here on the project browser, I've got a new level 2 ceiling plan and a level 2 floor plan. Now if you're using the full version of Revit, you've also got a level 2 structural plan. If you're using Revit LT, you won't get the structural plan. Well, it turns out that we don't really need the structural plan anyway, so I'm actually going to select that level 2 under structural plan and just press the delete key to get rid of it. So it's as easy as that to get rid of a floor plan that you don't want to have. Now let's add one more level. So I'll come back here to the datum panel, click the level tool again, and the reason I got floor plans when I created level 2 was because of this checkbox right here. Notice it says make plan view. Right next to that is a plan view types, and the reason that I got a structural plan on my screen was because that was one of the choices here. Now, you can actually select or deselect any of the ones that you want to create or not create here to control which views are created ahead of time. Or in this case, if you don't want any floor plans at all, you can just simply uncheck the box, and then I'll come over here and make sure that the little dimension on screen says 3, click my first point, pull it across to here, click my next point, cancel out of the command, put my mouse near that endpoint, roll the wheel to zoom in, and then come back and select it. And this time I'm going to click right on level 3 because I want to change the name of that to parapet. So it's at 33 feet. Its name is now parapet. When I click anywhere in empty space, that will deselect the level. Notice the difference in color. So the parapet is black where the other ones are blue. Blue indicates that there's an associated floor plan somewhere over here on Project Browser, and black indicates that there isn't. So because we unchecked the Make Floor Plan Views, we got just a datum without any associated floor plans. So that's all of the levels that we need. Now I'm going to click back to my level 1 floor plan view, which is still open in the background, and add the grids. So grids run vertically, but otherwise they behave in much the same way that levels do. So here's my datum panel. Let me click my grid tool. And what I'm going to do is kind of start right about here, click anywhere, and then move straight up to about here, and then click to place that first grid. I'll move over to the right of that, and you see this little temporary dimension here? When it says 24, I'm going to click, and then click when it's lined up, and that will create the second grid parallel to the first one at that distance of 24. Now, if yours moved and didn't become 24, you can just activate that number and type in 24. Now, what I'm going to do is roll my wheel here near the top and just show you that it automatically numbers these in sequence. Now, I'm going to hold the wheel down and pan slightly so that I can see the full extent of grid 2. And then I'll click my modify tool here, go back to the grid tool, and then keep going. And I want to just make sure that each one of these is at 24. And I'm going to do a few more of these up to grid 6, making sure that each one of them is 24 from the previous one. Now, the next grid that I want to add, I want to start right below grid 1 here on the left, click and drag horizontally this time, and then click again. Notice that that one comes in as grid number 7. So it's really important that you change that number now. Otherwise, the next one will be 8 and 9 and so on, and you'll have to renumber them all later. But if I click right on top of number 7, and I don't even have to cancel out of the command to do this, you can put in numbers or letters. I'm going to type capital A, press enter, and now I'll move down here, click and drag across, and create grid B, and then I'll come back over here and make that 24. So notice that it will now sequence from the letter that you left off at instead of the number. C is going to be at 28, as is grid D. Now, pan or zoom if necessary, and go ahead and click the modify tool to cancel. And notice that these are all a little bit too short. You can select any one of the grids. It doesn't matter which one, because notice there's a dashed line connecting all of their endpoints together at the bottom. Look for this little open circle at the very end, and when it says modify the grid by dragging this model end, you want to click and drag, and notice that you can pull that down and all of the grids will stretch together in order to make them long enough to go past grid D. So I'll click anywhere to deselect. I'll come over here to my zoom toolbar and choose zoom to fit. And we now have our completed level and grid layout. So every building you create may not need grids, but almost all of them will need levels. And it's usually a pretty good idea to start any new project by laying out the levels at the least, and certainly the grids in many of the projects as required.